Hello, everybody. My name is Russell Hill. I'm the co-founder of FixedOPS Marketing. I'm also the host of WTF, which is what this is, and that is what the fixed ops. Get your head out of the gutter. It wasn't what you first thought, but that's the reason Charity came up with this. It's all her idea, so blame her. We also have a new thing we just rolled out because even though this is what the fixed ops, we don't, as you probably know, and incidentally, we have thank you for all the followers and shares and likes and loves and comments because we have a tremendous following. This has been wildly successful, and it's not because of us, it's because of all of you. So thank you very much. But we also have a new thing that you'll hear more and more about soon called FixedOPS Institute. And it's a super forum of higher learning with the best of the best in the fixed ops world. So tune in for that because it's coming up here pretty soon. However, today I'm joined also with
I'm Charity Dunning. I am the CMO at FixedOPS Marketing and the co-host here at What the Fixed Ops. And before I introduce you to our guest, I need to shout out a new sponsor of ours, WYNN'S.
Oh, yeah.
So with 80 years of experience in innovation, WYNN'S leads the industry with product and system innovations that drive vehicle performance and longevity. People who love cars love WYNN'S. So check them out. There's a link in the description below. John.
that was okay. Nico, go ahead, Charity.
John Traver, the CEO of Traver Companies. Welcome to the show.
Hey,
a little bit about
Nico auditioning with the fastball, you know,
yeah, did you see that?
High and tight. Yeah, right there.
That was a good throw.
Oh, this is good. Thanks for having us. So good to see you two again. We sat together in January and you were kind to join us at our VIP event during NADA. And it's so good to see you both again. You look great.
Well, thank you. You do too. I got to tell you, I got to know him really well that night, but I'm going to back up to like 1996, 1997. Okay. And I started selling cars in 85. So I've been in the industry a little while, in the vendor space for about half that time now. But we went to this thing for a week-long thing called Traver Boot Camp, and it was down in Houston. And I met him, but I met a lot of just phenomenal people. But that was a pivoting point that accelerated my career even further after going. I think it was about a week long or something, but just amazing talent. He had an amazing staff.
Yeah.
All the I's were dotted, T's were crossed, and I learned so much. As a matter of fact, a lot of you probably, well, I bet every one of you know who he is, but maybe you've never really seen or heard much of him. But I like to refer to him as a servant leader or a humble alpha because he's just a genuinely giving, wonderful, warm human being. If there's another side of him, I haven't seen it, or he's tapped down those demons over the last few years or something like that. But I've never seen it. And you know what? I'll bet all of you who have never seen that side of him either, because a lot of you, I know a lot of people in this industry, and they all knew who Traver Connect and John Traver is, and reminisce about the Traver Boot Camp back in the day. What a phenomenal career in this industry, John. How did you actually get started?
I got started in automotive selling. I was in Waukesha, Wisconsin. I remember interviewing with my girlfriend's dad. He had a couple jobs available, parts driver job. It was summertime, 1986, so a year after you started. This is around May. And, you know, I could see myself driving that parts truck, Russ. You know, the hourly was and the windows are down. I thought I could do that. And he said, I want you to fill out this profile, describe yourself as best you can. And so it was a DISC, Performax, right? Dominance, influence, steadiness, compliance. I didn't know, but I did. He said, look, I'm going to get back with you tomorrow. Come on back. I came back. He said, well, good news, bad news. He said, the bad news is the parts driver job is filled. The good news is you have a career in sales. And it was like the wind was let out of my, you know, my balloon. I really didn't see myself selling. He said, look, he said, just how you think of people and how you look at people. He said, you won't maybe be exactly like some of your peers. He said, but you have the ability to listen and fill people's needs. And he said, I think if you use that, you'll do well. And I thought, well, Honda store, mid 80s. I thought, I could do this. He said, oh no, I could never have you work here. He said, you got to go interview with Jim Garvey at the Dodge store. And so obviously I knew where I stood with Bob at the time. So I go interview with Jim Garvey and ended up getting the job there after a couple of interviews. And, there's probably more to that story, but I started in sales and I worked my way through management. And a few years later, I had my first company and was doing work with Russ Darrow Group.
Yes.
Director of operations for and training for Russ Darrow. And then that kind of evolved into what eventually would become Traver Technologies. So, yeah.
Selling cars back then is not like it is now. But I got, so I'm on all these different kinds of forums and, et cetera. And one of them is called Modern Day Car Sales. And one of the topics, it was actually yesterday, is on this app called Clubhouse. You ever heard of Clubhouse?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
One of the question or the topic during this particular time frame after they did a reset is the road to the sale dead? And no, it's not dead. It's been modified. It's obviously processes are really important. And I do believe that when you deviate from the road to the sale, it costs you gross, repeat, referral, CSI, and SSI. But for people just starting, now after you get to know and understand, but really it boils down to, it's not complicated. It's just all relationships.
Yes.
It all boils down to relationships. So what was the beginning? What did it look like that became what I experienced, and so many of you out there, of Traver Boot Camp?
Yeah. Oh, you're talking the BD Boot Camp when we did that tech. So I'll tell you a quick story. Prior to the boot camp, I had trainers that would go out into the field, and I started by myself and then had one guy, and they came back with their tail between their legs, Russ. They would meet a sales manager, and the sales manager say, hey, staff's upstairs, you go up in the BDC and do your thing. So they were really saying, I don't want to have anything to do with this. And so the guys would come back and they were like, look, they're not embracing this. And to myself, I was like, Traver, you need to figure this out, dude, because it's going to crash. And so I just quickly, I said, I'm going to do a management awareness conference. They just don't have the vision. And I think there's a few bases around the diamond when you're growing something. I think one is you cast a vision. John Maxwell said this years ago. Then I think two, you got to get them to buy into the vision. Just because you cast it doesn't mean they bought in. Right. So this was second base, it was getting them to buy in. So I wrote the MAC and then put it in a little binder. I went to Walmart. I never forget this. I bought these red chairs with the cheap chrome and some tables. And I had a room that would seat 25, 30 people. I asked my wife to cook food. I said, I'm going to get them for basically a day and a half. And I reached out to our stores, the general managers, and Vic Vaughn, Vic?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So Vic Vaughn was one of the guys in the room. You can ask Vic about this. And there's Vic, right in the front seat, and it's basically saying this better be good because, Vic, if you don't get his attention quick, it's over, right? Chris Garrett, who ran some of the John Elway stores, I had his guys flying, and I literally paid for these guys to come. I was begging to help them, basically in the beginning. And so this is how I opened. I said, listen, there's a dozen things we can talk about today, but if you don't know what your appointment ratio is, then you don't need a BDC. And I said, it's very simple. What we're talking about is predictable showroom traffic. And I said, you have a 1-to-1, a 2-to-1, a 3-to-1. Let me explain. 1-to-1 for each salesperson on the showroom floor, you have one confirmed appointment. You know that better than 50% will show and better than a third will close. So if you have 10 people, you got 10, you got 5, you got 3 car deals. How many are tracking me? Everybody raise their hand. I said, if you're at a 2-to-1, I said that 10 people, you got 20 confirmed appointments. 3-to-1, you got 30. Where do the appointments come from? They come from your incoming phone ups, talking intelligently, asking the right questions, setting appointments that show. They come from your unsold showroom traffic. This is going back 30 years now, Russ, but I'm kind of going back in the old cavern to grab this stuff. But But to me, I could see their body language. It's like, okay, I get it. So that was sort of I understood. They didn't want to hear, I call it water skiing versus scuba diving. I still do this today. I had a conversation with one of our VPs yesterday. I said, she said to me, what can I work on? And I said, honestly, learning the difference between water skiing and scuba diving. I said, sometimes your temptation is to go really deep and talk about how much you know about the subject instead of just leading the group on top of the water. You can go deep later, but the idea is to show them, connect the dots. A lot of people can't see that. And that's what somebody in your position as a vice president, really what you're doing is you're showing them how this works. You're not actually teaching them every step. That's what I was trying to do in the first 5 minutes. And I think Vic would tell you, he knew in the first 5 minutes he was in the right place. And I said, what we're going to do in this workshop is I'm going to show you exactly in the first 5 minutes of every day to know where you stand. You're going to know where you're at. You're going to know what the day looks like before you get 10 minutes into it. And your BDC can guide you there. And so everything else I do, I'm going to layer and backing up how to make that happen, how to troubleshoot, how to plan for that next level. So that's kind of how we got to boot camp. What made it special, you said it early, the people. In the beginning, it was me teaching this, but I knew quickly I had to duplicate myself, and there was a certain way to do this event. And you had to have, it wasn't scripted, you know, there's certain phases of the messaging, you know. Communication, as you know, you and I agree on this one too, it's a contact sport. Again, it's not a scripted sport. So you got to know what to look for. Yes, I think there are key words and phrases. There are key questions that you learn to ask, and then you listen really well. And I think listening is half of selling. The root word selling comes from selge, which literally means to serve. And so if you kind of go back to the beginning and say, what was the initial idea behind selling? It was serving somebody. Well, how do you serve somebody if you don't know what they need, right? You got to listen. And so a lot of the questions, a lot of things we taught in the call guides, you know, came and emanated from that thinking.
Hello, everyone. I just wanted to take a moment to say a few words about our new sponsor, WYNN'S. People who love cars love WYNN'S. With over 80 years of experience in innovation, WYNN'S leads the industry with product and system innovations that drive vehicle performance and longevity. WYNN'S leads through our innovation, our technology, and the products we create. We bring a legacy of superior performance that professional service providers trust through our heritage of innovative formulas and unparalleled service. It starts with fuel and oil, and it ends with excellence. Our dedication to research and development has led to more than 18,000 granted and pending patents across our company. And that drive continues today at WYNN'S. New vehicle technology like EV requires leading edge service and products. WYNN'S ensures our products meet EV requirements and still provide the same high level of protection that we've always offered. We meet tomorrow's needs by using our knowledge and technology today. WYNN'S brings innovative, technically advanced, professional grade solutions to the world. Our legacy of innovation and performance is always copied, but never outrun. So thank you, WYNN'S, for sponsoring the What the FixedOPS podcast.
Yeah, and I know, so a couple of things that stand out that I learned back then is the Fufu.
Yeah, Flora follow-up, buddy.
Yeah, and I still hear it occasionally today. Charity's going, what in the heck are you guys talking about? It's fun up follow-up. The other one that really sticks with me is I didn't know what it meant, paradigm. And so I remember a paradigm is rules or regulations that establish the boundaries we live by. And so, and I believe even to this day, more than ever, even though I'm on the fixed side versus the variable side, but there is a paradigm shift, I believe, taken place. And I'm going to stop there because Charity does really great research and comes up, and I think you know some of the questions. But Charity, do you have a question?
Well, I have one that I just popped into my head just listening to you. And do you think that to be in sales, it's a learned thing, or can you be taught, or is it natural, or can it be taught?
Mm-hmm. I think, tell Nico I said what's up, by the way. Yes. I've learned a lot in my life when people tell me I can't. So, there's a group out there that might not be naturally bent to sell the way maybe Russ or I see selling. But I'll give you an example. I have a vice president here in a separate company who's not a salesperson at all.
Mhm.
She's an incredible human being. When we do trade shows, everyone comes to see her. She's been over client services for a decade and a half. And when she picks up the phone and calls you, if you need something, I'm gonna tell you right now, you're gonna be signing the order. So she is not, you see where I'm going with that? So I think define salesperson. Was talking to a guy that we hired this week, extremely experienced. He dealt with training people that didn't see themselves as salespeople. And he went and shifted into consulting. And he said, well, do you understand what consulting is? It's giving people advice. And he said, instantly, when I started doing that, he said, they all said, oh, I can do that. See, so to me, I think there are some people that are naturally bent that just, they have it. They're typically going to be higher energy, very low fear factor of failing per se. But people that maybe have a little bit of reservation, Charity, they can learn this. They can learn the roadmap. So I think, there's this wide swath of opportunity for people that are interested in contributing and generating revenue and helping people make purchases in whatever industry, including ours.
That's a great question. I really tend to think that, and yes, I believe also it can be taught, and there's different ways to do it. I've learned so much about failing, right? First attempt in learning. I have heard no and failed so much. I don't really have much fear anymore because no is just next opportunity. That's all it really means to me. But before I met you and went through the boot camp, I went through some horrible trials and tribulations back then, and I got myself straightened out about 3 years before actually coming to the boot camp. But in the early 90s, I learned a lot about selling through Cecil and Larry Van Tile. I worked for the Van Tile organization for many years. And I'll tell you what, man, that is one heck of an organization. But there was a lot of missing back then. Some of you probably won't even believe this, John. I know you will. If you let a customer walk without touching the desk, you got one warning. That's it. And after that, you packed your bags. If you came to the desk to work a deal, you come back, you better have some kind of commitment. I don't care what it is. You better have some kind of commitment, or you got one warning and that was it. And you learn, and everything was about numbers every morning. Huge process from the uplog, right? Ups to demos, ups to turn, write-ups to turn, write-ups to demo. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. And there's a lot of truth to numbers, like what you were speaking about earlier. But as far as selling, everybody's selling. I just don't think they really know it. They sell their kids, they sell their spouses, they sell, whatever it is that they're passionate about or upset about. I think it's certainly, for me, it's just been, it's all about, I think at one point in time, I was an introvert. I know you find that hard to probably believe today, but I was just really afraid. And I met this guy. I got to tell you this story. His name is Mike Biggers, Tyson Buick in Fort Worth, 1985. And for the first 90 days, I sold, and they had a great training process, and it was great. But after 90 days, I flattened out. Something happened, and it seems to be pretty prevalent in the industry too. I started to figure it out, John. I knew what I was doing, but I really didn't. And I was missing a key thing. And Mike Biggers took me under his wing, just a phenomenal mentor, spiritual advisor, life coach, whatever you want to call, sales manager. He was all the above. He built a tremendous relationship with me. So he asked me, because we had to do this 6-point walk around. Okay. And you never drove the car off the lot. I mean, you never let the customer drive the car off the lot. You had to drive it. You had first, and then you had a route, but you also had to go out and get the car and start it, because how many times you get in a car with a customer, it's 94 degrees as it is today. Somebody left the AC on and it clunks as soon as you turn it, and it's hot air blowing out. It's just it's all those things. But anyway, so I was doing a walk around in the showroom as I was instructed to do. And where I missed it, and at that moment, another important part of my career took off. I'd say, would you like to go for a demo drive? And he said, that's the problem. I said, what do you mean? You're asking? Shut the door and say, let's go. We're just going to go around the block. They'll say, hold on, no, it's mine. No, come on, shut the door. Let's go. You know, you want to take it around the block. Come on, let's go. And they'll go. I digress. So
Peer pressure.
Ask.
Yeah.
Don't ask. Follow me. That my training on that one was follow me, or we're going to just bounce over here. And you just led, you know. There was something I ran into years ago, Jay Abraham, who's the people may not know this. They may have heard of Jay Abraham. Every once in a while, you'll see him pop up with Tony Robbins. But Jay Abraham back in the day worked for an ad agency. He created these slogans. And his most famous was, "Where's the beef?" Do you remember? Who was that? Who was that?
I don't know.
Burgers, fast food, Wendy's.
Was it Wendy's?
Wendy's, where's the beef? Remember the grandma? Where's the beef?
For whatever reason, Arby's sticking in my head right now with what's his name? You know, we use the beef anyway. Yeah.
So Jay did that, but he had a great saying, and it went like this: 90% of the population silently begging to be led.
Mm-hmm.
I agree.
Isn't that good?
Yeah.
No,
very good.
That's
Very
stuck with me. And so it's, to me, I think if people are so like here, I mean, we have a couple 100+ associates that are entrusted to our leadership. And I mean, they're trusting that we're making good decisions on a daily basis. Now, some organizations may look at it and say, you know, I have X amount of people working for me, and I don't have an axe to grind there, but I do think there is a different view. I think you're looking at that a little different. I look at it like, you know, folks have a choice, and it's our job to let them know what the mission is and make them part of that mission and show how they're contributing to us accomplishing that mission, whatever it is. And so they're looking for leadership, lead, right?
I think that it's just like our kids and or our grandkids. They say no, they buck up.
Right.
They want freedom and flexibility. Hey, you know, my friend doesn't have to do it, you know, but deep down, they really do want to be led. They really do want to be held accountable. And we just have to stick to our resolve. And, you know, it's really great. Let me ask you this. So you have really involved with Traver Technologies. So you do stuff with fixed operations and sales both, right? Or
yes.
No?
So
Okay.
you're talking Traver Connect now. So Traver
Right.
Tech was that first company I sold
Got
to
it.
ADP, right? And then a couple companies later, we got Traver Connect in 2011. Yes. So why did I start in service? I think if I could speak to that first of all, it was the undone part of BDC. Back in 2005, when I was still at ADP, you know, I'm speaking to our executive committee. I said, look, there's this huge need in service. And I said, there's a ton of data. There's a ton of moving parts. I said, it's different than sales, where you go to the store and we equip the staff. You have 10 salespeople that, you know, they're going to get 15 leads a day between the phones and the floor. But I said, in service, you have 3 advisors and they're going to take 60 to 80 phone calls and work 15 ROs a day that are in front of them. I said, do you see the issue here, right? You got
Huge.
more people to take care of than you have people taking care of them in service. And in sales, it's the inverse. I mean, I only got to juggle. Hopefully I get to talk to somebody today. Sometimes that's it.
Absolutely.
And it, you know, worst case scenario, you know, on an average day, I'm not talking a tent sale day, you know, I'm going to talk to a few people, right? Whereas in service, shoot, I've talked to a few people by 8 o'clock, right? So, you know, you have a problem. And so I got stiff armed. They didn't see it. They basically said, they didn't really stiff arm me, but they just said, look, John, it's not our core. Are you talking about building a contact center and the whole day? I said, yeah, I think we're going to have to be ready to do that. It's not our core business. I said, okay. I just want to, for the record, I just want to say that in 2014, the reason it's called CDK today, they bought not only Cobalt, but you know, eLeads gets bought, which for part of that business is what, Russ? The contact center.
Yep.
Right. And half of that business was service. So I mean, I could kind of see, you know, like, hey, we're going there. Now I get it. If you don't want to build it, no big deal. But so that left me in the middle, 2011, I'm going, okay, we're going to do this. Now I'd already bought a contact center in commercial real estate, and that was growing. So strategically, what I was also doing was I said, okay, I'm going to take the back office cost and I'm going to bifurcate. I'm going to cut it in half. So like our accounting team can, you know, with a little bit extra help, payroll and things like this, I can cut that cost in half, and one company supports its part, the other company supports its part. That company now has, both companies have a competitive advantage. Same thing with IT, same thing with facilities, like that, right? And so it worked. I mean, it took time, but it worked. And so both of those companies they're both critical mass businesses, so they require a certain amount of revenue for them to be able to do what they're supposed to do in this space. But below critical mass, you're writing checks to a business like that, right?
Mhm.
So from a cash flow standpoint. So that's kind of was the vision. But Traver started in service. The idea, you know, there were a couple key points. I mean, if I can highlight it, I think one was, you know, dealers were missing calls. So it started there. And we still have an issue. If we talk in service and we say the phones, everybody knows what we're talking about.
It's
right?
huge.
That's all you got to say is the phones, right? No,
Yeah.
So what's ironic to me though is, you know, the death of the phones. You know, I mean, I've listened to a lot of folks talk about AI, and we have dealers that have left us for AI and have come back. So we have our own AI product that will roll out. I've taken our time. You know, we've spent time. We feel like we can come to the market at a different place, at a different cost, less. So you have stores spending $1,500 to $2,500 a month on AI, and you know, customers, about a third of your customers are going to accept AI in a typical market. Now, Brian Benstock is in Manhattan, you know, he's in New York City, and everybody uses Google there to do everything. So, but it's hard to base a business in Dallas or in Portland, or you know what I'm saying? Not everywhere is New York City. And so you got to zoom out enough and go, okay, what are consumers doing? At the same time, you don't want to do this and say, I can't hear you, because there are customers and there are demographics, younger, that will embrace talk to text and things like this to get what they need. But at the end of the day, I think the scorecard in service is really not just about calls, it's about retention. And so what we work to do there is we basically built out tools, services, software where they can do it themselves. We can do it for them. We have a new product coming out that's called RQ2, Retention Quotient. So almost like an intellectual quotient, right? Where are you? But what it does is it solves the biggest problem. And for me, retention after warranty, when we're retaining 20, 25, 30% of the cars we sell after warranty, that's a serious problem. It's not a new problem. It's been around for decades.
And we did it to ourselves.
We did it to ourselves. We propped up another industry, but I mean, I can solve it in a sentence. Go get the car. That's it. Go get the car. They don't want to come to the store. That's the bottom line. And so that's part of what retention quotient will do is we will concierge that middle piece. We have our own drive staff in certain markets. So we'll make the connections digitally and even live, letting a customer know they're due, and then we'll go get the vehicle, return it to them. So it's a pick up and deliver organized service. The reason a lot of, you know, it's interesting. Some dealers, Russ, feel like it was a fad. To me, the scoreboard is retention. So if the pandemic woke us up for a time and it was a fad, then is retention solved? And my message isn't probably for everybody, but it is for that tier of folks that are going, hey, look, we hear you. We see the number.
I don't know, John. I think it is for everybody to some degree or another. It is really ugly. And if Brian Benstock's listening, he probably occasionally, kudos to you for getting your own dealership. But that guy is a 24/7 service department machine.
Yep. So one of the things I talk about, Brian, every once in a while is how important it is to do the right thing as opposed to doing things right. I love when he'll talk about pickup and delivery and say, look, pretty much every day we're sending a car to the wrong place at some point in the day. In other words, they screw up. You know, it's like,
Yeah.
hey, they have Charity's car and it ends up at your house. That's not good. But the bottom line is, if they can make that right, what you guys all remember is one thing: convenience.
Right.
I mean, they make it right, and they give me that time back. That's what I remember. Nobody else can do it. When you put your ladder against the right wall, it's amazing the things you uncover.
I don't think that, I think people are starting to wake up to that, like the paradigm shift. It's convenience, the mobile service, the pickup and drop off. These are things that became probably mainstay because of the pandemic. That was the wake up call. But people sometimes don't really understand the convenience, and they'll pay more because of the value associated with it. So they say, well, what do you mean? And this is where they still miss it. So John, down the street about a minute, I have a convenience store, and let's just say a gallon of milk is $4.99. Walmart's a little further and it's $1.99. Which one's cheaper? Most people say the $1.99. I said, absolutely not. It is not. First of all, it takes longer to get there, the wear and tear, your time, where you're going to have to park the car. And if you have a ding because a cart hit it on the way out, where you got to go to get that dairy product. If you think you're getting out with just a gallon of milk, you're wrong. And so which one really is more convenient? Hence the name convenience store. And people say, well, that makes sense. That's exactly what you're talking about. I
Yes.
will pay for that.
Yes.
And so will everybody else, I think, don't you?
Yes. Yes. You know, what's ironic is the first tier dealers we have in the pilot phase are writing the check. That's how they understand. They're thought leaders, and they're like, hey, we'll cover it. We'll cover it. We got it, because we already know the CP on those ROs is going to cover up the cost.
Absolutely.
And it goes beyond even that RO, because there's equity mining that follows. There's all kinds of things that are part of this strategy that we're working on. It's a lot of moving parts, but I go back to your first question: service, BDC, or sales. We're doing both. We have a quick connect product where we take overflow sales calls as well. And the schedule rate is very high. It's over half on our schedule rate. Our connect rate is high, and that's why. And what it does is it converts basically a lead into a queued up call in the first minute. So when that lead comes in, so what ends up happening is the stores want us to take all the calls, and that's not the business that is designed to do. We want the store to be in the front line. We want to catch the stuff they're missing while they're in a sales meeting, while it's busy on the floor, while it's that one time of the day. And so that's one example. We have a BDM training program. In fact, there's stuff I just saw came through recently, a couple big stores that are using us for training. So, you know, that was a General Motors initiative. We're doing work with GM, and you know, they gave us the opportunity to be involved with some of the co-op money there on the sales side as well. So, hey, just listening and you know, developing.
I love it, man.
Roll out, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Charity.
Well, let me ask you. I have so many good questions, but we're probably not going to get through all of them.
We never do we, Charity?
We don't really,
We
but I noticed that you've been through multiple businesses. You've also you're a rancher. I think that's current, right? You're still ranching, and I'm curious how that overlaps in automotive. And I'm also curious. I'm going to combine these two questions. How, you know, what do you do when you have like a squeaky wheel in your company somewhere, whether it's an entire department or, you know, how do you go about, you know, solving problems?
Which one do you want me to take first?
It's
The
up to
ranching?
you.
All right, well, let's start ranching. So ranching is, I was adopted at 7. I grew up in Milwaukee, hitting baseballs in the back of the old Miller Brewing buildings that were vacated. And I was adopted at, you know, basically 5.5, and went out to North Prairie, Wisconsin. At that time, that population was 686. So
Wow.
from the city to the country, I was the youngest in the house in the foster home, and it was a great experience for me. And I became the oldest and the only boy with the Travers. And so, and again, it was a sweet process. And for me, it's kind of part of my faith journey too, just seeing the goodness of God through my life, when I was just cared for and I didn't even really have an understanding. So now I'm sitting on this small farm surrounded by dairy farms. And, you know, what I was probably a target for to be an indentured servant charity. You know what I mean? I was like, hey, that dude right there, let's put him to work, you know,
Right.
and half the time it was free. So as I grew up, you know, it was things like my list of chores and all this and running equipment and doing different things. I couldn't wait to get out of it. Like I despised it. You know what I mean? It was just work, work, work. And there was a lot of sport opportunities I missed because I was working. What I didn't know was there was something else being built in me, and it was a work ethic that I would see later in life that I didn't realize I had, compared to maybe somebody who had a ton of free time. So this is like late 1990s. And I found myself looking at rural real estate in Texas. My wife and I are, you know, in Houston at the time, in the Sugar Land area. And man, there was something about wide open spaces that just made me smile. And I kind of wanted to find a way to share that with the family. So I sell to ADP in 2000. And in 2004, I buy this 550 acre ranch outside of Houston. And it's a longer story, but bottom line, he had, it had a really nice home on it, had a guest house on it. It was a gentleman's ranch is what they call it, meaning it wasn't really a production ranch. It was more of a getaway. It was from my office, about 40 minutes from Westheimer, jump on the Beltway, Russ. I go up to 290, I go 12 miles north on Highway 6, and I'm there. So like if you came in to visit me, I could say, hey, you want to grab a sandwich and swing up to the ranch real quick, say hi to the guys? And you'd be like, yeah, let's do that. And in 40 minutes, we're pulling in the driveway. From our house in Sugar Land, it was 70 miles exactly. So it was nothing. So we buy this place, and right away I'm like, oh, you knucklehead, you got to figure this out, because I mean, you can't just pretend like this. You have to. So a ranch business was formed, Third Day Ranch. And the idea was, and we named it, we had went to the Dove Awards in Nashville. And so we're coming back, and Third Day was a band at the time. They won New Music Artist of the Year or whatever. And so we're driving back, and we had already closed on the ranch a couple months before. And I was like, hey, I think I got the name. And I was like, Third Day Ranch. She goes, I love it. So we have these commercial cattle, and they were like crossbred. We had bought them from the guy that had it, and they're crazy. You know, it was just a mess. And I'm like, okay, this is not it. But I was a believer in a couple things. Number one, I had a little bit of it in me. What I didn't have, and I love that old Charlie Mungerism. You know, Charlie is Warren Buffett's partner, and he says, you know, when you realize what you don't know, that's the beginning of wisdom. And so to me, it was like, okay, well, I don't understand commercial versus seed stock here. I understand it in dairy in the north, but I don't understand it here. So that allowed me to start asking questions to people that I knew. So like Texas A&M was 15 minutes away.
That's right.
So you got the ag extension. So like I'm tapping those guys. And then I'm looking at like the realtor that sold me the place. Do you guys remember Dukes of Hazzard?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Well, this guy was Leroy.
Charity, you don't? Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. Leroy Hody was kind of like Boss Hogg a little bit, you know, this big guy. And it was kind of hard to understand him. Sometimes he was so Southern, but guys, he was savant. The guy, he owned a real estate company, he owned a cattle company. I mean, the guy, you know, he probably used $20 bills for kindling. I mean, the guy was really, really bright. And for some reason, he liked me. And I called him, you know, this is after I bought the property. I'm about a year in. I said, Leroy, I said, will you come to the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo with me? I said, I want to buy Charolais bull. And he said, sure. I'll. So we go down and we're looking at bulls. And I'm telling you this for a reason, because I think you can learn something from anybody if you listen. Right. And so he's like explaining to me, and I'm tracking with him pretty much, but he's talking about it's too much this, too much that, this particular bull, too much this, too much sheath. Okay. He said, let me put it to you this way. In the bull business, he said, 2 is not a good thing. Okay. And I was like, wow. So the excess, we're looking for moderation is what he was saying. And I just remember in my head, I'm like, this guy is wise. Like he can pare it down that quick. And so, so we started there. About a year later, I called him back and said, hey, I'm going to go Brangus. I said, the black hide sells better. I said, I think they're more durable. He goes, it's a wise move. I said, okay, good. So we buy this herd, and the herd is registered. So now they're all papered and they're all certified with the Brangus deal. And so it's kind of like getting in the car business and buying a used car lot, or buying a Mitsubishi franchise. No offense to those that have Mitsubishi franchises getting started, but you kind of know like the cards are stacked against you a little bit.
Yeah.
I didn't know that yet. I figured going from commercial to papered, I stepped up in the class system. Well, the problem is the genetics of that team that I had bought wasn't strong enough. I was going to produce linebackers for 1960 NFL, not linebackers for 2020 NFL. Those are two different bodies.
Two different, yes, they are.
Speeds. Got it? So, and I remember now in the dairy business, I'm like, hey, genetics, man, and artificial insemination and in vitro. And I mean, there's all recips and there's all kinds of things, flushing you can do. So long story short, I reset. We went to a high-end production sale and we bought 3 of the top 20 bulls in the breed in the world. And it was a huge investment, bought a bunch of females dams that had already calved and had proved out winning calves. And guys, within 2 years, our herd was in the top probably 20 in the US, maybe top 12 in the US. I mean, it quickly, when your inputs change, and you're working with the right stuff, things happen quick. So we got up to 450 animal units, Charity, in that business. But then we were trying to be in the protein business, and there is something that happens before beef in the protein business, and that's forage. See, beef needs forage, right? Livestock need forage. So one of the things I noticed on our property, and now it had grown to about 800 acres, it was, I put irrigation in and I'm like, look, we're going to improve forage. So I began learning on forage, and forage, we needed coastal, we needed Jigs Bermuda, which is a hybrid Bermuda. It's more dense. It's about 6,500 pounds per acre per cutting versus 2,800 pounds. So there's more grass.
That's
and it's
huge.
more nutritious, right? And so today what's happened is we still have cattle. They're up here in the Northeast. We have 6 locations, but we're now supplying hay. We had feed stores all around the area as our hay business grew, but we now supply hay to a Fortune 300 company, Tractor Supply, and we're in multiple states. I think we're the 2nd largest 2-string hay provider for Tractor Supply in the United States. In fact, they're flying down this month with executive level people to watch the process. I mean, we built this really—
That's exciting, man.
Yeah, it's pretty cool, just the relationship there. They're an incredible organization, really well run. They're basically Walgreens for, the feed store business. If you've walked into a Tractor Supply, you can buy clothes and gardening and all that. The stickiest product at Tractor Supply, you'll never guess, is birdseed. It has more SKU numbers in the cart when a customer buys birdseed than any other. Number 2 is hay.
Is it?
I would have never thought. Now maybe hay, but not birdseed.
So special people in this business. Shane Swinson's like a kid brother to me. Shane is our general manager. Another story there, but we developed that place. We developed methods of doing business. We develop, everything from our cost centers to our accounting and improvement. We still do it to this day. Multiple locations, thousands of acres that we ranch and farm, and it's a lot of fun. And then the other question is the squeaky. I think it was the squeaky wheel.
The squeaky wheel, yeah. But I mean, you're running so many, so much. I mean, there's got to be a squeak every once in a while somewhere.
Yeah, there is. So, squeaks sometimes, first thing I would say, just need oil, right? Sometimes they just need oil. Like when you're saying that, and they come in different flavors too. I think there are temporary solutions. I think there are permanent solutions. There's game-changing solutions. See? And so to me, I think assessing right is probably where you want to start. And so you want to define it first. The deeper part, I think, is how do you vet these solutions? I think that's really what you're asking. And that question's even better because you start prioritizing what you're discovering, right? So like with the cattle story I just told you, I told you about all the struggle with the cattle, and that we're working with 1960 product. and then we shift gears and we're registered. But what do we end up doing more of? Hay. And so watch this. The denominator that A&M was teaching was dollars per animal unit. Dollars per animal unit. So you would take the revenue from the cattle each year and divide by, and you get this denominator, this number. Well, once we got into hay, there's no animal unit. So I said, well, it's dollars per acre. So let's do dollars per acre. And this is just me in my head, like driving, I'm just thinking. And I thought, well, wait a minute, I wonder what dollars per acre is with cattle. Guys, that was the question. Let me tell you something.
Wow.
Einstein, yes. And by the way, I'll tell you what the number was. The number was 9.5 times the cattle number. Yeah, with the same acreage, the revenue is 9.5 times.
Gosh.
Okay, we just found something. So to me, it wasn't like I was looking at cattle as a problem. Does that make sense? So here's something Einstein said. You've heard me say this before. I love this quote because I think it opens the door for everybody listening. He said, it's not that I'm smarter. I just stay with the problem longer. But here's the thing. There's another thing that you don't hear me talk about a lot because I often don't get a chance to go this deep. But here it is.
We are passionate about helping consumers find a great, trusted place to get their car fixed. We have 4 million uniques who come to our website each month for car repair information, and we help them find our RepairPal certified locations. We also have amazing partners like USAA that offer our RepairPal certified network to their customers and members. So how are we going to help dealers? Well, dealers sell 100% of the cars, but over time, after the warranty expires, the repairs go up and up and the revenue potential goes up, but people keep leaving the dealer over time after the warranty. By years 10 or 12, only about 20% of people are still servicing at the dealer. Why is that? There's one dominant reason, and that is price perception. And being RepairPal certified helps you overcome the primary price perception problem. So come let us show you how RepairPal can help you too.
It's not like he just sits there with the problem and waits for it to solve itself. Here's what he said. He said, if you put me in a critical position, this is still Einstein, and you only gave me an hour, like it was life-threatening, and you only gave me an hour to solve it, I'd spend 55 minutes working on the question so that I'd only have to need 5 minutes to solve it.
Wow.
It is a wow.
That's deep.
It is because, see, I think there's a lot of folks that are what I call in the red zone on the football field. They've moved the ball in their business so far and they get stuck in the red zone. Like they settle for field goals because they forget how they got there. They got there by asking really good questions. It might've been their why. Like Charity, it might be for you, you're doing this for your family, for the kids. You're okay. So what happens when they graduate? Or when you go, God forbid, right?
I'm working on that. I don't know.
There's some shifts that are coming. Like we know that life evolves. It doesn't stay the same. So it's, to me, these are healthy questions. And they also keep us humble. Like to me, any of our leaders that don't ask questions, I will find opportunities in a group to remind them, if you're not asking questions out loud, you may want to check the old humility meter. Like if you have all the answers, be careful, ask questions.
You know who they are too, John, because matter of fact, Charity and I were talking about this yesterday during an interview process to hire her some talent to work with her. And when on a scale of 1 to 10 on how much someone knows. And when someone says a 10, I automatically shut down because that means they have nothing left to learn. They figured it out. So that kind of scares me because we're always learning. We're always learning.
We are, the thing is, no matter what role you're in, you're leading something. If you're the front contact center agent taking a call right now, you're leading that conversation for that customer.
That's right.
Everybody's leading something. I just want to say that as you get into elevated leadership roles, you got to be able to prioritize well. In order to prioritize, you're going to have to be able to ask those questions I just talked about. And the better you get at the questions, the better the answers get. They get married. They're the same. Soft questions produce soft answers. Intelligent questions produce intelligent answers. And you remember the old kaleidoscope? You look through it.
Oh, yeah.
The colors. Yeah. That to me is what this exercise feels like. It's like, just keep turning it. Just keep working on the question. And like my role here in these businesses is Paul Revere. I'm supposed to be able to anticipate, but how am I going to anticipate if I don't listen, if I don't look, if I don't ask, like what's coming? And that's what they want to know, what's coming. So like AI is 5 years old, and you got companies struggling with AI telling
Yep.
you how great they are.
Yep.
All right. Okay. Maybe it is great, but that's not exactly what I'm hearing. I do think it has a role.
It
Okay.
does.
So to me, I said to them, I said, look, we're going to do it. We're just not going to do it first.
That's right.
Let this happen. Here's why. Here's how I think we can fit that. And then maybe everybody adjusts. So does that make sense?
Oh, no, absolutely. We have topics about this. We've been fortunate enough to speak about AI and chat and how it affects automotive. And most people are oblivious, but we've had it for years. They don't even know it. A lot of them have it in their home. They don't even think about it with Alexa or Google or
Right.
what have you.
Right.
It's
Right.
in all of our cars, but it's a tool. It's what it is. It's a tool to be used to help us. And I think a lot of it, I hear a lot of conversations, mostly out of ignorance, including myself. You said so many great things in here today. Part of the leadership thing, we're at a place in our company that personally I haven't ever been before, and I'm so stretched on my time. It is critical. I don't really have much to just. I have to have scheduled meetings just to be able to keep up with staff and management and stuff like that, because most people, until we got to the point where we are in this company, and it's a great problem because I get to I don't have to, I get to, it's an honor. It really is a blessing. But people would just call me all the time, and I train them that I'm always responsive, always responding to an email, always responding to a phone call, always responding to a text, and I can't do it anymore. And it's and a mentor of mine a long time ago, and Sherry's heard me say this many times, but he said, Russell, are you willing to do the things that other people are not willing to do, so you can have and become the things that most people will never have and never become? And I wrote down what you said earlier about soft questions versus intelligent questions. I'm guilty of asking too many soft questions and not as intelligent. And therefore it just even consumes more of my time because there's soft questions and there's soft answers. And so anyway, Charity, go ahead.
Well, and that makes me think, John, you really strike me as a good teacher. And I want to ask you, how do we all become better teachers?
Thank you. I think that's a passion of mine.
You can tell.
I do. I didn't realize that. Maybe at certain points in my career, it was like, okay, well, this is really important now. But as I look back, I think part of being a good teacher, in fact, I want to just say real quick, Halle Berry was on Property Brothers, whatever they call that, where
HGTV.
Yeah. And she redid her 5th grade teacher's house, and Dawn and I saw it last night. It was awesome. But there's an example of a teacher impacting a person. And now you're going 40 years out, and you're coming 30 plus and coming back and taking care of her. And that teacher still has it, by the way. As I watched her, she still has it. I think there's a couple things. I think number one, you got to be a learner to be a teacher. And I think to be an effective teacher, it's this continual process. What did Mark Twain said? Training is everything. Have you guys ever seen that poem from Mark Twain?
I have, yes.
Yeah. And we had it in the old boot camp books, Russ. Training is everything. And what I would always say is this: you might not be able to remember everything in this poem, but it'll move you. But just remember that first word in the title. It doesn't say trained. It says training. It's plural. It's perpetual. And so in order to train, you have to learn. So there's this learning piece. Number two, I think you got to be willing to walk into opposing views. Like, I'm getting better at this, but I still have a long way to go. So whether it's, let's say, somebody has a different view on solving one of the world's problems, or a different religious view, or a different view on EV, like I'm learning, Charity, how to walk into that and say, hey, Charity, so tell me more about this, because I'm not sure I see it this way, but I want to understand,
It's powerful.
like, how does that feel, by the way? Is that refreshing? Right.
Yeah.
And by the way, you can only do this if this is for real, sincere, right? Like you truly want to understand. I can't tell you how many times, Charity, I've been able to learn something that I just did not experience or have by just asking that. And there have been a few times where those people come back to me and say, how about you? Do you see it this way? You said you see it maybe a different way. And then they'll ask me, why? What did you get? But that's not the instinct of most people.
No,
They're carrying a bag. They want to sell what they got. They're walking around with a high chin, like they're working a runway. I'm right and you're not. Look, you don't want to be that. You don't want to be in that posture, right? We're only here for a little while. So, I guess I entertain the fact that I could be wrong at every given point. And I'm really trying my best to make a difference in front of whoever's in front of me or with whoever's in front of me. And learning is part of that. So do I get disappointed sometimes if, I see somebody heading down? Yeah, but I also respect the fact that it's their life, with my own kids. My favorite phrase, you can ask them, is it's these two things on the seesaw. It's consequence or reward. And so, they'll be talking about over the years, they'll be talking about whatever topic. And I'll say, wow. And it's my way of abdicating decision to them. And I'll be like, wow, that's a big decision. What do you mean? I said, whichever way you go, just remember the consequence or reward is 100% yours. Well, what do you think, Dad? Well, I don't know. Have you thought about this? Have you thought about this? Have you thought about this?
now you got their attention.
That's all I was trying to do.
I know. Yeah.
Because it's not always going to be me in front of them. All I'm trying to do is teach them when you're making decisions. So, Charity, there's another example of teaching, right? It's like, I'm not actually giving you the answers, but what I'm trying to teach you to do is how to think with wisdom, right? And so there are some people I know that are extremely courageous. They're bold. They'll stand on that wall. They'll take the bullet for you. And I have a dear friend, Steve Farrar, who
I know Steve. Yeah.
Yep. So Steve was a dear friend to me. And Steve, as you know, passed in February of last year. And Steve had a lot of courage. Steve had a lot of courage.
He was bold.
Yes, definitely bold. And my oldest son, Mitchell, is like that. He's cut the same way. But what I find is that guys and gals that have a lot of courage are going to be even better when they got people that really lean hard on wisdom. And you put the two together, and now all of a sudden you get folks that can navigate and know when to stand tall. I mean, it's a better combination. And again, that's not a shot on Steve or my son. It's great that they're really strong but it was always like my way with Mitchell is like, look, what you're saying is bold. And remember, walk in wisdom, right? Consequence, reward, all that stuff. Think this out. And what's the best route? What's the best time? Like sometimes people are full steam ahead and it's like, look, it's full steam ahead, but it's just not right now. Okay. Yeah, it's late. Right. So anyways, it just, I guess, speaks to the fact that there's so much to learn and there's decisions you got to make and you got to prioritize. But I do love the learning piece, Charity. I do. I think lives change. I think the easiest way to grow a company is to grow the people in it. And been saying that for 30 plus years. And so when you think that way, you look for ways to grow them intellectually, grow them emotionally, grow them with skills. There's so many different ways you can grow them in confidence.
They want that. I think
they do.
People want to know they count, they matter, they make a difference, and they're part of something instead of just a number and your numbers weren't there, so you're fired. That doesn't work.
Correct. So there's that.
So over the years, your philosophies have probably changed. And I know that when I say things or I physically do something, that there's certainly a cost reward. There's consequences for every action and reaction. I still sometimes don't think like I should, but I can tell you this, the older I get, the less I really know. I used to know it all, and I know so little today, it's not even funny. There's been people in my life, and I wonder if this has happened with you, where my philosophies have changed, particularly since I established my relationship with God. Things have really changed, but people would say, well, you didn't used to, that's not what you used to stand for. And I said, well, I have more information now, and I'm entitled to change my mind. That wasn't a good path for me. Everybody lost with that kind of thinking that I used to have. Have those things happened for you? I'm sure they have.
Yeah, they have. Bob Beal, who's been a mentor to me and a dear friend. In fact, Bob was the guy, quick story, Bob, B-O-B-B, B-I-E-H-L. He's the guy I was telling you two about with the Decades book. Do you remember that when we were together? And so Bob is a consultant. And like he was on the board of directors at Focus on the Family with James Dobson for 31 years. That's a long time, you guys.
That's a long time.
Okay, so that should tell you a little bit about Bob. But Bob also worked, wait for it, with Peter Drucker. Yes. So
Peter Drucker?
Yes. The godfather of business, right? I mean, just, okay. So real quick, Bob refers to it as phases. And I used to love this. He would say, John, if you could just look at things in phases, he said, you'll allow things to evolve. You'll allow things to change, whether it's people, it's businesses, it's relationships. And he said the word phase, stage, point. He said, so sometimes you can say, Joe, at this stage of the business, we're unable to do this. However, I do see a stage where if we're doing this, but where some people are careless with the response, they'll say, oh, we can't do that. Okay, you can't do that ever. So now insert that in your own relationships with your spouses or with people you lead. And so now all of a sudden what it does, it leaves the door of possibility open. It says there's a voice of reason though right now. And so if somebody asked me, well, why has your view changed? I said, well, at that phase of my life, here's what I was thinking about. I was in my 30s. I was thinking this. I didn't know this. At this phase of my life, I have grandkids. I look at this different. I'm trying to, you see, and so now I see some colors I didn't even know existed under the sun like that.
There's a lot of them too.
Correct. Even beyond Roy G. Biv, right?
This is, we didn't even get to half the questions. So let me tell you what I know is going to happen. We've had some really great people here, and I'm really honored and humbled with what Charity's done with this and how she markets it and stuff like that. And we didn't really talk much about business, mostly life and philosophy and leadership and listening versus talking, etc. But people have inevitably come up to me, and just recently happened when I had Glenn Lundy on here, and then Sandy Cerami as well. Russell, how did you get John Traver on? How did you get so-and-so? How did you get so-and-so? And I said, it's real simple. They said, no, tell me anything you do, just ask them. Just ask them. They may or may not, but it really is that simple. Just ask. And we did, and we're so honored and humbled. And I've learned so much more about you that I didn't know, even from that night, because you were a consummate professional and entertainer. And I mean, as far as, orchestra, it was a wonderful event with wonderful people. We'll never forget it. We got plenty of pictures to remember that by too. It was phenomenal. And I am, I'm really kind of and you're like, okay, a rancher, successful business owner, you associate with some really great people. And I'd like to say this, and before we actually close, that I've surrounded myself with people like you for the last 28 years of my life. Before that, I did not. And they were naysayers. They were people said, you can't do that. I tried that. That won't work. And they get interrupted by people who do. And I think what's an important part, one, my relationship with God, but another important thing is what I listen to, who I associate with, and what I read. That input dictates different output. If not, I keep getting the same result, right? The definition of insanity. And this is exactly what John has been talking about. All of you out there that are listening, this is exactly what he's been talking about. This is how, so check this out. Listen, like, love, share, make comments, reach out on his LinkedIn and stuff like that. He's a wealth of information, and you're certainly not going to go wrong.
That's for sure.
Yeah. And so thank all of you for another successful episode of WTF, and that's What the Fixed Ops. But you can see now we found our niche, that we talk a lot about the human journey and the things that happen in people's lives, pivoting points and crossroads where people's lives turn. And most of it really boils down to faith. And they realize that, hey, Zig Ziglar, I was honored and blessed a few years before he passed to be invited to his office in Dallas to do a devotional. What an honor, because I grew up in the business reading his books and listening to his cassette tapes. Some of you don't even know what cassette tapes are out there, let alone 8 tracks. I mean, oh my God, but, or, whatever. But John, once again, Charity and I really want to thank you. And before we actually go, Charity usually ends. Go ahead, Charity.
I end with,
well, with what you have a couple of minutes, you can say whatever you want.
Okay.
Like, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well,
Just
John,
don't make me sing. Just don't make me sing.
That's one of the requirements. You have to sing.
We're in trouble, sister. We're in trouble.
No, but you can, if you had something you wanted to mention that maybe we didn't get to or anything like that, the floor is yours.
Well, I just, first of all, thank you for being so kind. You guys know you don't do anything alone. So that event, how about the magician, by the way?
Yeah.
Is Lori Halter still getting phone calls now that her phone number's
I don't know. It was it was magical.
That was unbelievable. It was so good. We had a sweet night. It was a great time. But you don't do anything alone. And, the Bob Gowers of the world, the Lori Halters, Tammy Coatney, Karen Rust, the list goes on here. There are so many people, Rob Canellis, Hisham, Byron Youngblood, that add to the culture of the business. And they're part of the fabric. And so I appreciate these people walking it out the way they do, because it makes the story what it is. All I would say is this, I'd love to come back. If you guys ever have the opportunity, you want to go farther, you say the word. And Russ, the door is open. You just got to tell me when you're coming by.
Okay. Well, it was just like, it took me almost 6 or 8 months to ask you. So, we're probably 30 or 40 minutes from each other, because your office is in Richardson, right?
Yep.
And that's where I grew up. So everybody heard it. So I am going to reach out to John. I'd love to take you to lunch and kind of tell you where we're at, what's going on in our company, what Charity and I and some of the people in our company are experiencing, if that's okay.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I guess closing thought right now, what's resident on me is Tim Keller passed recently from cancer. He had a very aggressive form of cancer, and back in 2008, and it went away and it came back. In the last 4 or 5 years, he's been battling it. And he's known for his work as a pastor in New York City and the many books he wrote. His ability to reach so many different types of people and skeptics, smart people, really smart people, was inspiring to me, incredible. I think his work, frankly, is still working. And this is the thought. One of his famous books for this topic is called Every Good Endeavor. Every Good Endeavor. I read this years ago. My son recommended it. Endeavor, it illustrates how to make a real difference with our work. We need to reappropriate the idea of vocation or calling, as some refer to it, what I do for a living. And we should be looking at our work as a contribution for the good of many, not merely as like for my own advancement, right? So I think all human work ultimately it's not merely a job, it's a calling. The root word vocare is where we get vocation, and it literally means to call. That's the root word for vocation. So
I did not know that.
Yeah, I think as an entrepreneur, you got to make sure the people on the boat see their role beyond a job. And some need help doing that. I know I do. And when you get most or all to see the vocare, in the change that you're bringing, whether it's XPS Solutions, Third Day Ranch, Traver Connect for us, Traver companies. Well, you're part of something special. So that's what I would say.